Today, we're digging into something that is just absolutely fascinating. We're looking at the subjective terror of 3 reported cryptid encounters, specifically Bigfoot or Sasquatch-type creatures. But here's the catch. We aren't here to debate the physical evidence. Instead, we're going to step right into the shoes of the witnesses. We want to know exactly what the circumstances were, what the creature actually did, and most importantly, how these people felt during and after the whole ordeal. Seriously, what happens when a totally ordinary day suddenly throws the impossible right in your face? Well, as you'll see, we're going to explore how fear literally evolves based on your environment. We'll trace this crazy path from a sudden shock out in the woods up to a high-speed pursuit and finally culminating in a sustained, absolute siege at an isolated home. And keep in mind, this is all based strictly on the eyewitness reports. So, let's dive right in. Section 1. The Eel River Shock. Let's take a look at an unexpected, solitary encounter out in the forests of California. Now, the circumstances here are just completely ordinary, which honestly makes the resulting terror hit so much harder. Picture this. It's the late 1950s, right around 10 a.m. A family is camping along the Eel River in California. A 10-year-old girl decides to take a quick morning walk to a misty meadow near her family's fishing camp. She loves nature, she feels totally at ease in the woods, and she is completely alone. As she's walking up to a small knoll, she suddenly hears footsteps. Thinking it's just her little brother trying to pull a prank, she actually calls out to him, joking around. But it wasn't her brother. When this figure steps out of the bushes, her emotional response is immediate and totally visceral. She reported, quote, "I froze like a statue." It's that suddenness of the unknown just completely short-circuiting her system. And the sheer, bizarre level of detail she gave about this creature's appearance is just staggering. According to her report, she's suddenly face-to-face with an entity that's, get this, 7.5 to 8 feet tall. It's covered in this soft brown down, it has close-set red eyes, and a mouth bearing massive fangs. Then it lets out this horrible, unearthly growling sound. But the detail that really just shatters reality here, the creature was inexplicably wearing tattered, torn human clothes. I mean, wow. Faced with this towering, growling anomaly, that initial freeze response immediately flips into desperate flight. She turns and absolutely sprints back to her family's camp. And the emotional aftermath? It's profound. She reached the camp completely winded and stayed utterly terrified for the entire remainder of her family's 2-week fishing trip. That feeling of safety in the woods was just entirely broken for her by a few seconds of pure shock. Now, as terrifying as a solitary encounter on foot is, try to imagine the sheer dread of being actively hunted. Which brings us to a really compelling question. Can you outrun the unknown when you're trapped inside a moving vehicle? Section 2. The Torfin's Road Pursuit, a high-speed chase. We're shifting our environment entirely for this one. It's 1994 on a pitch-black road near Torfin's, Scotland, just outside of Aberdeen. The participants this time are 3 young men driving together at night. They're insulated in their car, seemingly protected by, modern technology and thousands of pounds of steel. But as they navigate this dark road, they encounter a large, dark-colored, hairy man-beast just waiting right by the roadside. Now, the creature's action here is what really sets this case apart. It isn't just a static observer. It goes on the offensive. The beast actually pursues their car at a terrifyingly high speed. It's aggressive, it's relentless, and it easily keeps pace with their speeding vehicle. And then, just as suddenly as the chase began, the massive creature simply gives up and stops dead in the middle of the road. This brilliantly illustrates a truly terrifying shift in psychology. These guys felt absolute, intense terror because the perceived sanctuary of their moving vehicle was entirely shattered. Think about it. When a massive cryptid can keep pace with a speeding car, that barrier between safety and vulnerability just vanishes. You're no longer just an observer passing by. You are prey in motion. So, while you can eventually drive away from a pursuit on a highway, What happens when you literally have nowhere left to run? The terror reaches its absolute peak when the unknown threat comes directly to your doorstep. How on earth do you protect your home? Section 3, the Lafleur County Siege. This brings us to our final and, frankly, most intense encounter. The circumstances here really set the stage for some prolonged dread. We're in rural Lafleur County, Oklahoma, at an isolated homestead tucked deep into the densely forested Ouachita Mountains. Now, this wasn't just a brief encounter. A family living here reported being besieged by these creatures repeatedly over a grueling 2-year period. And to make matters worse, during the climax of this whole event, a freezing winter downpour is looming, further isolating the family from the outside world. And this creeping dread escalates over a brutal 2-year timeline. It starts simply enough, just mysterious prowling around the house. But then, weeks later, the creature begins coming right up onto the porch and tampering with the windows. Months later, it escalates to stealing deer meat straight out of an open-sided freezer. Finally, we see an immense show of immense physical force, leading to where the family is now, literally holding nightly armed vigils. To really grasp the raw physical threat here, just look at this specific action from the creature. The official report states, quote, "A metal gate next to the house was crumpled in a manner suggesting a force that was applied by a giant hand." I mean, the creature's actions were no longer just curious. They were destructive and highly invasive. It was trying to get into the house, stealing their food, and easily destroying heavy metal property. So, what's the emotional response to a 2-year siege? Well, the feelings of the participants shifted entirely from simple fear to desperate, militaristic defense. The psychological toll got so heavy that the wife was actually too terrified to stay. She evacuated the property with the kids. This left the men behind, armed with assault rifles, firing blindly at the glint of eyeshine in the dark thickets around their home. We're talking about a state of absolute, sustained desperation. Section 4, the psychology of fear. Let's step back from the individual stories for a second and look at the actual anatomy of fear across these uniquely terrifying events. When we look at these 3 encounters side by side, it's wild to see exactly how subjective terror changes based on the environment. At Eel River, being on foot, that sudden appearance caused frozen shock and immediate flight. Over at Torfin's, insulated inside a car, a high-speed pursuit caused intense terror in motion. And at Lafleur, trapped in an isolated homestead, that sustained prowling and property damage resulted in prolonged dread and an armed defense. It's like a sliding scale of nightmare scenarios. So the really crucial point, and what you should take away from this explainer, is how the setting and the duration of an encounter radically alter the psychological toll on the people involved. The environment literally dictates the human response. A fleeting shock in the woods is definitely traumatic, for sure, but a home siege, that morphs fear into a grueling, exhausting state of armed desperation. Now, I want to make something very, very clear before we wrap up. We maintain a strict neutrality on the physical existence of Bigfoot. There's no universally accepted scientific proof of these creatures. However, regardless of the physical evidence, the psychological terror experienced by these individuals was entirely real. The trauma, the running, the evacuations, the gunfire, the human reactions to these events are undeniable and incredibly visceral. As we conclude this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Put yourself in the shoes of that young girl, or those drivers, or that besieged family. Ask yourself, if an ordinary day suddenly confronted you with a fight for survival against the unexplained, if the forest suddenly stood up and approached you, how would your mind even process the impossible?